everybody, it's me, Laura, and today we're going to be creating our Fantasy Fairy flower house. Say that really fast 7 times, right? Or 10, right? And a few mushrooms. Now, I'm doing this in 2 parts. So today will be part 1, where we're going to be focusing in on the little fantasy flower house, because this thing took me a lot longer than I thought it was. Oh my goodness. And I started with a ball here of about 1.5 inches in diameter. So it's a fairly thick ball of mud clay. And then I'm rolling this out into a teardrop form and pushing it down on the surface of my tile. And I'm doing this where I'm also kind of pushing in a little bit. You saw there on the very bottom, I'm trying to create a really nice elongated kind of teardrop, but it's not really a teardrop. This is just a stem to a flower, but I'm making that blunted end because we need to put a door and a lot of fun stuff into this stem. Now, you also notice there, I went ahead and I measured this thing. It was about 8 inches, long, so this is pretty big. And you're gonna you're gonna get a nice sized piece out of this. Now, once you get most of this formed up, I kind of like to take it and I like to give it a little bit of a push here and there on the stem, kind of making it look like it's curving up, kind of, in a wavy sort of fashion. Now, you can do this if you wish. You don't have to. However you want to make your stem for your mushroom house, absolutely do it the way you want. I just like to have it where I have a nice blunt end on the bottom, and part of this is because we're going to be placing a door down here for our little fairy to go through. Now, for some of you wonderful peoples out there, I know you guys love it when I get specific, so I decided I'm going to measure this thing for you. I figured out it was about 2 3/4 in width at the very bottom base of this mushroom stem. And when I got up to the just below the little window there on the stem, it wound up being 1 inch. So it really shrinks down quite a bit when it comes up to that area. But anyways, I'm coming in here with some more of that mud clay. I've rolled that clay out on a #1 setting on my Atlas pasta machine, and I used my 3rd smallest Exacto cutter on the oval bit, okay? I'm also rolling out a log here of some more of that mud, and I'm gonna wrap that around this. This is gonna be kind of the frame of our door here. But the more I started looking at this, I was like, well, I just don't like the size of this door. So I took this piece back off, I brought my Exacto cutters back in, and I went to the 2nd largest instead. Now, when you do this, I told you, yeah, my base was 2 3/4 wide on my stem here. If you want to make this wider or smaller or whatever, you can do so. What you're going to do is, with those Exacto cutters, you're just going to make a judgment call as to whether or not that particular oval cutter will work as a door and not make it look like it's overwhelming the actual stem itself. And that's pretty much a judgment call. That's kind of that's kind of you just saying, well, do I like it or not? I don't know, and going through all of that. From here, I decided, though, once I took and put that piece down, put my log around, I'm bringing in my needle tool now, and I'm just kind of making these impressions of, I wanted to make it be kind of like granite or rock. And this was just my way of trying to do that. And actually it worked out pretty good. So as I was creating my rock, I decided to go ahead and make the lines on my door here to kind of give it a bit of a, well, like it could be wood, but it's not really, because I'm going to have a lot of fun with paint. We're going to bring in our metallics. But right here, I'm bringing in some more clay. This has been rolled out on a #4 setting. And I'm just taking a thin sheet here and I'm making a tiny little rectangle. We're going to place that on the door. And then I'm going to take a little bit, I'm going to make a tiny ball. And this is going to be, again, it's a judgment call as to how big or small you want your little doorknob on your door. I started out and I thought it would be fairly decent size. I realized, no, we got to go ahead and make it even smaller. But once you get that ball, the precise size you like it, go ahead and place that down at the top of your little rectangle there and just gently pat it down, looking like a doorknob. I then brought in a knitting needle and I decided just to go ahead and make a little hole at the bottom, giving the idea of a keyhole. From here, I brought in some more clay, again rolled out on that #4 setting, and I start placing down little strips which are just going to create some really nice ribbon type lines that will go up the trunk or the stem of our flower here. But from here, I'm going to go ahead and let you guys just watch my hands talk as I complete up more and more of my fantasy flower house. All right, so now we're going to start creating the petals to our flower. And this ball was 3/4 of an inch in diameter. You're going to want to make 4 of those. You're also going to use your straight blade, kind of just clean up the sides as you press down on it. And then you'll also create a 5th petal, which will be 1 inch of a diameter as a ball that you start with, and then create that also into a teardrop form, pressing it against your tile surface. Now with each of these petals, as you sculpt them out, I kind of went with whatever just came into my mind, okay? But I did kind of come up with this idea that 2 petals would sort of match each other, and then another 2 would sort of match each other, and then the third one, the middle petal, was going to be a little bit different than the other 4. So right here, like on the outside petals, I had them where the lines were running mainly horizontal. And then the next 2 inner petals would have more of a vertical line. That would be an emphasis on those particular petals. And then the middle petal itself had a little bit of both. A little bit of both. Sorry. Famous movie comes to mind. I cannot say it. So from here, I'm just going to go ahead and let you guys watch my hands talk as I create these petals and place them onto our fairy house.
1991. Birds and people are living together in seemingly perfect harmony until one day a young man catches fire. This is Phoenix.
Okay, so at this point, all of my petal pieces have been sculpted out the way I like them, and I'm placing them onto the stem of my little fantasy fairy house that I've got going. And I decided I'll go ahead, I'll put that longer petal piece right in the middle. Of course, the vertical striped tight petals right next to that, and then the horizontal ones. I then bring in another ball of mud clay. I made kind of kind of a wad, if you will, a ball, but then I press that down into the center where they all join, and then I bring in my ball tool and create indents on that particular ball piece. Once I have that done, I bring in some of my wire, 22 to 30 gauge wire, depending upon what you really like to use. And then I place that wire and I twist up some pieces, put that into the form itself, and then bake this all up at 275 degrees for about, I would say 15 to 20 minutes. And this is really dependent upon where you live and your environment. All right, so now we're going to start painting the stem of our flower. And I took out my sequin black metallic paints, and I love this black. It's really nice. It's not a matte, it's more of a gloss, but I like, I don't know, there's something about glossy paint compared to matte. I always feel like the matte is going to flake off or just, it just doesn't look good to me. But when I do it in this like sequin black, it's beautiful. But anyways, once I got that done, I then decided to go ahead and paint the background of the stem in my blue sapphire metallic paint. And then on the ribbon, some of the ribboned area on this particular piece also, I took out my rose gold and I thought, yeah, this would be a nice complement to that blue and it would look absolutely beautiful as I'm painting it on. So I went with those right away. And then I'm going to go to the door and I'm going to start painting that a chocolate brown and a taupe in the metallics. And it worked out beautifully. So right here, I'm going to be bringing in my gunmetal gray and my shimmering steel. And this is going to be the paints I'll be using on kind of my rock-like feature around the door. I start off with the gunmetal gray. I wanted my darker gray down first. And then I thought I'd go over it just slightly with the shimmering steel with the lighter gray. And that way then it'll look a little bit like, okay, it might be the idea of rock or similar to that. You can also tell too that I'm using that gunmetal gray on the actual plate for the doorknob area, and then I'm going to paint the doorknob itself in the shimmering steel. When I got to the vines and the leaves on this particular stem, I decided to go with my emerald flash for the vines themselves and then use the green flash for the leaves. Once I got that done, I started doing all the other little details on the stem. I used my metallic garnet red, and then I used my flashes, my blue flash and my green flash to kind of help that out as well. And then also then the shimmering steel to top it all off. So from here, I'm just going to go ahead, I'm going to let you guys watch my hands talk, and then we're going to move on to the flower part itself. All right, so since I've gotten all of this top part of my flower painted up in my sequin black, I decided to start with the middle petal, and I decided to start with the amethyst metallic paint. So right away, I'm bringing that into that middle petal, and this thing had kind of come apart a little bit in the oven, which was great because I could go ahead and take this particular petal and paint it at will without having to work around the others, which was, it really was a nice thing. So from there, I bring in my sparkling fuchsia and my blue sapphire and my emerald flash, and I put that really up at the top part, those particular colors right up there, along with that shimmering steel. And the more I was looking at that shimmering steel, I thought, let's go ahead and add this more into this petal. So I do so, except for the third band towards the very top of this petal, I decided to use some gunmetal gray in there instead. And that was kind of a nice, just a nice difference from that shimmering steel. At this point, I decided to go to the main part of the flower here, and I'm going in with that sparkling fuchsia yet again, especially on those inner petals, and I loved that. That was just, it was kind of what I needed. I mean, I love my purples, I love my blues and stuff, but every once in a while I got to go to that red, and that's why even too my gold is a good thing to go to. I need to add in that warmth because it makes such a difference to counteract all the cool colors that I might be working with. So keep that in mind. If you're going to go to a nice, unless you are strictly limiting yourself to a cool palette, counteract a little bit with some warmth amongst some of those cool colors. With the two outer petals, I really decided to make the base of the color on those petals the aqua flash, because I have my reds now, right? And that's really dominant. Have a little bit of that blue and green on it, but I thought, no, let's break it up. We need a cool color again. So I went to that aqua flash, which I absolutely love. It's just such a beautiful color with that blue and green mix. Anyway, I'm putting that down as the base on those petals, and then I'm going to come back in with some other fun colors like my emerald flash, my green flash, and then I'm going to come in with the rose gold and the sparkling fuchsia because I want to add a little bit of that warmth, right? Add that in, and then the center part of course will be that golden touch, kind of beautiful buttery like yellow, and then I'll do the indented dots with the black. So from here, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to let you guys watch my hands talk as I finish up the petals on our fantasy flower. All right, so creating the details in this flower was really, to me, key to the whole thing. It always does, doesn't it? You get down, you boil it down to the basics. I mean, you get the paints in there, it's all great, but really, it's the details that matter. And so what I'm doing here is I'm bringing in my 22 gauge wire, and it was my 30 gauge wire. If I was to do it over again, I would use 26 gauge instead of the 30. The 30 is pretty flimsy kind of wire. It's hard to sometimes wield, and I like the 26. There's a little bit more tooth to it, if you will, and it curls up a little bit nicer. So keep that in mind when you go looking for the wire. Anyway, I'm putting this wire back in there. I'm also adding a little bit of super glue just to make sure it stays in. I'm going to bring in my wire cutter, and I'm going to bring in the rest of the flower. I'm going to glue it up, and then we'll start trimming back the wire and curling it up and bringing this all together. Now, I want to quickly mention here that when I go to curl up my wire, I mean, it can go just everywhere, right? I mean, there's a lot of wire here to deal with. I trim it back just a little bit at a time because I'm not quite sure how it looks, and I kind of give it a loose curl like you're seeing right here. I have a loose curl going. This is to help me figure out where do I want to have that curl come up. How does that look to the eye? Does it look like it works well? And if not, trim it back or leave it the way it is and keep making the curls as I move on with my needle nose pliers. Now, the other detail that I love, and to me this is the main thing, is using my white Posca paint marker, and that's the 0.7. That's the tiniest one that gives you the really tiny, beautiful little details, and especially with making dots and lines and so on. And I have to admit, when I get to this stage, it looks really pretty good with all those metallics down, and I don't want to mess it up. We all get to that stage of, don't mess it up, don't mess it up, And I thought, no, I have to take that leap. I got to take that chance. So I gradually started doing it. I warmed up a little bit here with my dots kind of going into the stem of the flower itself. And then when I got up a little more courage, I started adding in little lines. And then finally, when I got to that purple petal, I thought, yep, it's time. It's time to do it. Let's do the curl. So if you need to warm up to get that courage, start with something small like dots, then go to small tiny lines, and then go to your bigger kinds of patterns. And right here even I started getting even more brave and did a bit of a checker with the white. Now, when you do this, and let's say you do mess up, here's a hint. Take a Q-tip and wet it, and it should take this marker off pretty fast and pretty easy. And you could go right back over it with whatever pattern you want. Okay, so this is the end result of creating our Fantasy Fairy flower house in polymer clay. Please use this for study and reference. And if you like this video, please like, subscribe, and leave me a comment. I'm always wondering what you're thinking. Otherwise, I am sending out my biggest hugs to each of you, and I hope you have a fantastic day.